So it feels like we had an election a month ago, and Canada's in a pretty particular spot right now. And let's say that this year you wanted to feel very sure about who to vote for, but every single platform has a 100-page plan that you want to go through. We did the work for you. Cale and I sat down this week and highlighted the issues of climate, healthcare, education, and jobs, which were decided by us and your guys' responses on Instagram. And then we took the big three parties, the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservative Party of Canada, and discussed some of the points that stuck out to us that each party plans to enact concerning these four issues. At the end of the podcast, we talked about political ideologies and who we're actually going to vote for in the upcoming 2021 federal Canadian election. So there's some gossip at the end there for you guys. We really do hope that you enjoyed, and we plead for you to go exercise your democratic right and put a ballot in a box. Thank you genuinely from Cale, Evan, and I for listening, and we'll see you when we see you. All right, so I said there wasn't going to be any episodes of The Fork in the Road until the end of the school year, and I am a liar, a big fat liar. Cale texted me a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, bro, we have to do an election special. And I was like, bro, we have to do an election special. The main reason I wanted to do it is I was looking forward to going into this election feeling confident in who I was going to vote for and feeling informed. So I'm happy that we got the opportunity to do this. You have anything?
No, I just think that a lot of people don't know a lot about like the different platforms and stuff, so hopefully we can help some people like get the main points across.
Yeah. But just a disclaimer right away, we're only going to be talking about the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, and the New Democrats. Personally, in myself, I want, especially with this election where we are in the world, my vote to be going towards a party that is going to be making immediate change. So I'm not discrediting the work of the PPC or the Green Party or the Rhinoceros Party, my dogs. But we just figured we had to focus on something, so we might as well focus on the big three. We are going to be heading 4 issues. You want to let them know what the issues are?
Yeah, so we thought that the most important issues, or what seems like the most important issues, are climate change, jobs and the economy, healthcare, and education. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to focus on those ones.
Yeah. So the way we're going to be structuring it, we're going to pick our issue. We're going to cover the 3 parties, their view on their issue, and then hopefully at the end we're going to sit, have a powwow, and see where we stand. So
yeah, we can talk about climate change first. So the Conservatives, a couple things that really stood out for me was that their goal is to conserve 25% of our land. Mm-hmm. They're going to end raw sewage dumping, mm-hmm. which is a big thing, especially in the St. Lawrence and in Quebec there. And they're going to ban the export of public waste, or plastic waste. Mm-hmm. And then they're big on zero-emission vehicles. So they want 30% of light-duty vehicles to be electric or zero-emission by 2030. Mm-hmm. And they also want to invest $5 billion in carbon capture technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I have on here. The carbon capture was big for me. I don't know enough about it in depth, but seeing from where the Conservatives have come from, these focuses on using, I wouldn't say using monetary and fiscal policies as a background, but centering their plan on climate change based off of numbers and actual fiscal policy is really, really good. So I'd like to see that they're doing that and they're taking the steps to look into the effects of carbon, the effects of our emissions, seeing them take action, even though it might hit the economy. I think that's a risk they're willing to take now, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, I think a really big thing in this election has been like Aaron O'Toole wants to distance the party from climate change deniers. Like mm-hmm. he said unequivocally that climate change is real and they need to do something about it. Exactly. So it seems like they want to out that kind of like image from the party, mm-hmm. which is good to see.
Whoa! See you later, microphone. That's going to be a little edit right there. That's going to be fun. But yeah, I think the new wave of conservatives, as somebody who has supported the Liberals in the past, it's very eye-opening to me, and I think people need to be willing to actually go and read, because Mr. O'Toole is changing the game.
Just one thing that I noticed is that they're taking a very different approach than like the NDP and the Liberals. Like the Liberals and NDP, they want to spend a lot of money and like in investments and like stuff like that. But like one thing that I thought was a good idea was carbon border tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So like countries that have higher emissions, they pay a tariff on their exports.
Right. So they're taking steps towards, even if the other countries that we do trade with aren't taking steps towards climate change, at least we're going to be taxing them for the facts that they're not trying to save the environment.
Yeah, like it's going to encourage like other people to play, or other countries to play their role and like step up to climate change.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's huge, especially if Canada really does have a vision in the future of being a powerhouse, whatever that entails, like economically or just in general, a place where people want to be, they aspire to live. I think it's absolutely huge that we're setting that standard. It's like, hey, if you want to work with us, that's cool, we'll work with anybody, but there is like stuff that we need to do.
Yeah, it like really set us as like a international leader in climate action. Hopefully.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, it's like a way to like increase revenue, like it'll hopefully help deal with climate change without spending money.
My one question for you, if we could loop back to the cars, do you think that goal of having 30% of light vehicles on the road being zero emissions, the sales by 2030, do you think that's going to do a lot in the short term? Or do you think this is something we need to be looking at? It's like, hey, they're going to have to be in office for a while for those differences to change a lot.
Honestly, like it's hard to say. Like I'm no climate scientist, so I don't like know like how efficient or how well these policies would work, I guess. But like it seems like at least like 30% is a very realistic goal. Like the NDP, I think, wants 100% of new cars to be electric by 2035. So that's a way more ambitious goal.
Right.
Obviously, I feel like this is more realistic, especially like the specification of light duty vehicles, because I don't think that a lot of like heavy duty machinery can go zero emission.
Or at least not right away.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, the car companies, I like the way the conservatives are looking at it, because it's like, hey, this change is coming, but it's not to the point where the Liberals and the New Democrats are like, we're going to flip your entire operation and you're going to just have to deal with that. So I think they're trying to avoid scaring away those companies, which I think is huge for the Canadian economy in general, because if we could become a leader in producing those zero emission electric vehicles, that would be very, very big.
Yeah. Another big thing that I saw from actually all three parties was that they want to like turn our economy around and focus on like green, the green sector, I guess.
Yeah.
And like especially with electric vehicles, like all three parties want to really focus on building them here in Canada because like, well, obviously that's good. It'll create jobs and like stimulate the economy and whatever.
Right. Yeah, and it's the world's changing. We just got to be able to change with it.
Yeah.
So the thing that I have issue with the Liberals, so I'm going to read this off the screen so I don't get it wrong. They want to enact the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, and this is net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And the act establishes a legally binding process to set national emission reduction targets for 2030, 35, 40, and 45. And each target is based on the best available scientific information. And I'm sitting here reading that, and I'm like, that's really, really vague, because like you said before, I'm not a environmentalist or a meteorologist, but I feel like if they're assessing our emissions, let's say in the 2022-23 year, and they give us a target for decrease now, that would have been much more helpful, saying we're going to do this in the first year. We're going to look at our emission levels and we're going to give us a workable target. Because if this has been the plan all along, why wouldn't they have started tracking these things earlier? That's what I was looking at when I was seeing it, because it's like, it's going to take years. And if that was really your plan to get into climate change the last time you got elected, maybe you would have started analyzing then.
That's true, yeah. I watched the French leaders debate, and Trudeau took some hits, like especially from Jagmeet Singh, about like not doing anything on climate. Like he was just saying like, oh, you promised all this stuff 4 years or whenever you got elected, and like he hasn't done anything about it. So yeah, poor track record.
And I was gonna say, there has been, all over my notes, there's little indents that say this is really, really vague. And I think of the three parties, because the Conservatives are so intertwined with the fiscal responsibility, theirs may not look the most attractive, which was the NDP in my opinion, and from what you've told me in your opinion. But it seems the most fiscally responsible and actually actionary. Because I like what the Liberals are saying with all of their climate change, but where are they going to get this money? Because we just went through a pandemic, and I don't know much about Canada's exports, but...
Yeah, do you know, like, what it was kind of, like you said, it was pretty vague, so I couldn't really, like, pick out, like, how much money they actually want to spend. But one thing I did find was that they want to invest $1.5 billion in electric vehicle rebates, try and help 500,000 people get into an electric vehicle. But other than that, like, did you see like what they want to spend?
Well, I did see that they have a plan to invest $8 billion to accelerate the green job industry.
Okay.
And like,
whatever that means.
Well, exactly. Not enough of us know enough about the green industry for us to say, yeah, that $8 billion, send it right there, because that's going to create millions and millions of jobs right away there. But like you just said, whatever that means, it's super vague, and it's concerning something people are caring about. So sure, if you have the $8 billion to invest and you're not taking away from another sector, it sounds like a great idea. But in the plan that I have read, they've given us, this is what we are going to do, not this is the actions that we're taking now, or these are the actions we've taken in the past. This is where we're going to have to make cuts to make this $8 billion work. It just seems like the New Democrats and the Liberals were just promising, hey, we have this money and we're going to put it here. And disclaimer, I know nothing about the budget. So like, I did look at the budget pages for the three parties, but I know nothing about numbers. So
yeah. So yeah, to move on to the NDP, since like you said, I think this was the most attractive plan for sure. But they want to reduce emissions by 50% from 2005 levels by 2030. They want to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. As I said, 100% of new cars are electric and built in Canada by 2035. And they want to immediately ban single-use plastics. So those kind of like check all the boxes. Like,
right.
I think at least like for somebody that doesn't know very much about climate science, like those are the things that I like to hear. I think like or at least on the surface they look good, but I know a lot of Albertans will not be very happy with, especially them ending the fossil fuel subsidies. Like they probably want to take the most extreme approach towards that out of like the three parties. So
I agree with you, and it's not that I don't agree that it couldn't happen. I just think it's so drastic, and especially because we live in Alberta, we could see that like that would be a huge flip for the entire province. But I think the one thing that you didn't touch on that I wanted to touch on about their climate plan is they want to have net zero electricity by 2030 and move to 100% non-emitting electricity by 2040 by introducing smart grid technology to bolster our energy sector and distribute clean power across the country, which again sounds like a great idea. It sounds like an awesome promise, but they didn't give us, like, at least in the part that I read, how much that's going to cost.
Right.
Where are you going to get the money?
Right, yeah. I think this is kind of a thing that we'll keep coming back to, but a lot of these things like sound good, but somebody's got to pay for it.
Exactly.
And I think that's what the NDP probably have on their side is like if people don't think about who's gonna pay for it, they're gonna like it sounds good to like all their policies and stuff.
And then when our taxes go up, they're gonna be like,
Hey, what happened?
Yeah, taxes and inflation too is like probably one that most people don't think about.
I was gonna say, the one thing that I do like about the Liberals over the NDP and the Conservatives about this in general is that the Liberals' approach seems to be geared towards telling Canada that they're focusing on the climate, on education, and on healthcare, and coming out of the coronavirus. Personally, I think those are the three things that we need to be focusing on. But that's because, like I said before, I know nothing about the budget. The fact that the NDPs are kind of trying to hide a little bit, I would say, by not putting their numbers out there or saying our taxes are going to be going up if we take action and all these things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's shady, but I would say it's kind of secretive, you know?
Well, yeah, I think it's like a typical like politics though. Like it's kind of like
half truths.
Yeah, and they just like say what people want to hear. And I don't know, it is kind of shady, but that's just kind of like the nature of politics, I guess.
I guess so. You're right. But if this was up to a popularity contest, I'm pretty sure my boy Jagmeet is going to be winning. People absolutely love this dude.
From like both anecdotal and like hard data, he's like the most popular leader out of all of them, like the polls,
likability wise and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I've heard everybody I know pretty much is like, oh yeah, he except for the party, I like this guy. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to talk about like the ban on single-use plastics. Honestly, I'm gonna plead ignorance, but I think it's kind of stupid. Especially like given what we've seen over like the pandemic, like we would not have any PPE without plastic.
True. Like
you can't tell me that you're gonna ban single-use plastics and then also tell me that you're gonna fight the pandemic because like masks, gloves, wipes, all that stuff you need plastic for.
Yeah. And in mass production, that was another thing that I don't know if all three, but I know the Libs and the Conservatives, like a huge part of the platform is ending the fight against COVID-19. And a lot of that involved having factories and places in Canada at home to produce that PPE.
Yeah. How
are you going to do that if you take away our plastic?
Yeah.
But my thing is, did they give a more detailed plan about how they're going to be going about it? Because I think if they're taking the approach where they're no longer going to be producing single-use plastic items, but the ones that are in circulation are going to be recycled and then reimbursed into the same type of materials for the same uses, obviously that's a better plan. But recycling is expensive. That's the one thing that people seem to forget, is it costs a lot of money.
And it doesn't I don't think it's that effective either. A lot of recycling goes to the trash anyways. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
No, I don't think they went too in depth about it at all. But sure, like on the small scale, I would love to see no longer there being any single-use plastic straws or stuff like that, lids and the stuff that go around cans.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's what most people think of when you say, oh, we're going to ban, like, single-use plastics. Like, oh, that's a good thing. It's, like, straws and lids and all that, like, litter. But, like, people don't think of, like, the PPE or, like, anything else, like, that you use.
Yeah. And especially right now, it just become a part of our normal.
Yeah.
But, so, I'm going to pick on the Liberals a little bit right here. Their surgeries. They want to immediately invest $6 billion on top of the $4 billion that we already have to help eliminate the health system wait lists. They want to provide $3.2 billion to the provinces and territories for 7,500 new family doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners. The second one, I agree with. I think that's huge. You got to be putting money into putting new doctors in there, but I don't know if that much money. The first statement, I just think that's way too much. they want to provide $400 million over 4 years to build on the growing demand for virtual care that arose during the pandemic. And I'm going to speak from my personal experience. Therapy on the phone sucks. So I genuinely don't understand. I get that people need it, and I understand why it's an idea.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why they're putting $400 million specifically into virtual care. You could just put the money into mental health care, and you have your subdivisions of virtual care. I just think you're limiting who you're helping with that. And just in general, their stance on healthcare, I think it's great. It's too much money. It's too much money.
Yeah. It seems like all the parties wanted to do a lot of spending on healthcare, which is like understandable. But yeah. One thing that really has been standing out to me though is like the talk of like mental health care, which hasn't been an issue in other elections, but has been in this one, which is nice to see like the parties like talking about mental health care and like on a federal level.
Yeah.
So the Liberals, they want to hire 1,200 counselors at post-secondary institutions, which I think is
huge.
It will be big, yeah. Like, I don't know, obviously as students, like, I think that it'll make it really accessible for a lot of people that need it. But, yeah.
I was going to say the one thing to add on to your mental health, I like that universally across the three parties, the 3-digit suicide hotline was there. The Liberals say they are going to completely fund it. The Conservatives just want to create it, and the NDPs want to create it. They'll see what happens. But the fact that they're taking those steps, I think it's huge, because with the pandemic, with maybe a potential recession coming in, people are going to need help. They're going to need access to help. So doing whatever we can to do that in the most fiscally responsible way, I think is very, very important.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, the Conservatives, they like have a whole, like they're calling it the Canada Mental Health Action Plan. Yeah, they want to invest $150 million in nonprofit mental health organizations.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think the 3-digit like suicide prevention hotline thing is like will be a very good idea. Yeah.
You just never know who's going to need it, right? And at least if it's there, the option is there. The one thing I saw about the Conservatives' healthcare stuff that I'd like to ask you some opinion questions about is that they have a big portion about medical assistance in dying. So they want to reinstate the 10-day waiting period to make sure somebody does not make their decision at the lowest point. How do you feel about that?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, I agree with you, especially with the first one. It's a rash, not a rash, but it's a huge decision, right?
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that it's fully conscious. But the problem of their medical assistance in dying that I ran into is that they require that any discussion of medical assistance in dying only occurs if raised by the patient, and prevent healthcare workers from suggesting it to someone who is not seeking it. What happens if the general public doesn't know that's an option, right? Who is going to deliver that information to them? In my experience, from what I've learned about it, I genuinely believe it's very important that it needs to come from the patient.
Yeah.
But how is the patient going to know what all their options are if they don't have the information available to them? And the healthcare practitioners have been providing that for the past however many long years. So
yeah. I mean, I think that they just don't want to like have any influence on it,
which I do think
because
is good.
It's like a moral gray area, I guess, or an ethical gray area. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's tricky.
Yeah. I thought that was very interesting, because I didn't expect that to be something that they were worried about, but I guess I didn't see it on any other platform. It must have been something in the last however many years that's been creating some friction, and I think that's a conversation that requires some more talking. I think that's worth it. But
yeah. Sorry, one more thing I wanted to point out about the Conservative plan is that they want to increase the Canada Health Transfer. Like that would be the money that the federal government sends to the provincial governments. for health to at least 6%. So, which was honestly pretty surprising. Like, to me, I wouldn't have thought that they want to increase like spending by that much.
No.
So.
But they're putting the money somewhere, I don't mean to speak for you, but somewhere where I think it's worth it. So, like, it really makes me happy watching them take those strides.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to say about the NDP plan about healthcare, so they have this Medicare plan and this pharmacare plan. And I don't know enough about Obamacare, but I'm going to say they might be very, very similar just in how drastic they are and how big of a change it was being introduced into the system. But for the Medicare, they have promised to lead the fight to expand it to include quality prescription drug coverage for everybody so that you no longer have to pay for prescription drugs for a 2022 start date with an annual federal investment of $10 billion.
So that Medicare would include dental, vision, and mental health, right?
Correct. Yeah. From what I have understood, correct. But still, $10 billion every year from the federal government?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, bro.
It is a lot of money, but it would like essentially like you know how our system is like semi-private.
Yeah.
Like obviously like we don't have dental or vision covered by the government.
Mm-hmm.
They would like essentially like cover everything.
Right. And my question for you about that, wait times are already a problem. Like, is that going to help us or is that going to hurt us in the long run, in your opinion? Because if you're waiting for ADHD meds that you need on your first day of school to actually get through school and you're not going to get them for 3 months, like...
Yeah, I think that, like our prescriptions are already, like, semi-funded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't pay full price.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it should be... Like, I don't think this is what they're gonna do, but I feel like it should be, like, life... Like, essential meds only should be covered.
Right.
And, like, how do you figure out what's essential is, like, a different question. But, like, and then, like, you could say that if you're gonna cover one thing, why not cover it all?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I just... Like, I don't know, like, because obviously dental and vision is part of health. It is healthcare.
Right.
But, like, can we, as a country, afford to do this?
Exactly. Especially when it's, like... Could you tell me what the top 5 exports of Canada are? Like, what we make the most money off of?
Yeah. Like, they wanna spend all this money and then, like, take away subsidies that would make money.
Exactly. I'm not saying that the Medicare plan isn't a good plan and that what is the opposite of privatize? Making medicine in Canada, all of it, including dental and vision public and under the public sector, is a good idea because I do believe everybody deserves to have access to it. But committing $10 billion to something you don't even know is going to work, like, I just feel like you're driving people away who are actually reading into this type of stuff, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like we said before, like, these things, like, they sound really good, and
Mm-hmm.
like at first glance it's like, why wouldn't I want, like, universal pharmacare or dental or vision?
Right.
Like, obviously that would be a good thing for everybody, but I just, in my opinion, I don't think that it's the right time.
No.
Like, given the, like, economic situation that we are in.
Mm-hmm. So, if you were to put your party forward, Cale's Party of Canada, in this election, where do you think all the money should be going?
I think towards, like, making things more affordable, which is, like, a big focus of the Conservative plan, is, like, on affordability and jobs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I think that after all the pandemic spending that Justin Trudeau did, like, we really need to, like, balance the budget. And, like, I've heard a lot of people, and I've noticed it myself, like, talking about how expensive groceries are getting and how, like, housing prices are going up. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, if, like, people can't afford to live, then, like, nothing else really matters.
Yeah, what
like,
are we to do?
Like, these are the things that, like, have a real impact on Canadians. Like this other stuff, like carbon border tariffs and, like, all this, like, climate or, like, universal pharmacare, like will have an impact, but, like like the amount of money that you're spending at the grocery store or like on gas and stuff like that has like real like solid value and like impact in your life.
Yeah, I was gonna say what you just said reminded me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like, bro, if we can't afford the groceries, sure, the carbon will help in 10 years, 15 years, but if I can't feed my family today, don't fucking talk about a carbon tariff, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I agree with you. The priorities of making Canada a more accessible place to everybody, especially with, I can't remember what the exact number is, but I'm pretty sure on the Liberal platform they said we welcomed upwards of 1 million refugees since the last election. And with those people coming in from however many places, however many different living situations, it's got to be like, can they provide for however many children they brought with them? Our Canadian citizens that are already here, can we provide? Like, even especially the Indigenous people, you know? I just think there's got to be a focus on something. Like, we focused on the big three for the episode. You can't promise everything, right? So,
yeah. Honestly, I don't know if I missed something, but I didn't put anything down for the Conservatives on education.
That's okay. I have some. It's because it wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, in the Conservative platform, I had to command F the word education to find points, but a couple of ones that I thought they had on there that are important enough, in my opinion, are they want to work with the Council of Ministers of Education to promote humane education as a part of the environment and sustainability, which I think is big. And they want to revive the regular officer training program at civilian universities to provide educational opportunities for their youth that are serving their country, which I don't know if I just didn't see it, but the Conservatives seem to be the only people that were adhering some of their campaign to the veterans, which I think was big.
Yeah.
They've done a lot for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that demographic is like mostly conservative anyways, so like they do that on purpose.
Oh yeah, I guess.
But
playing a game within a game. Cale's thinking on levels that I couldn't even begin to start thinking at.
But the Liberals, the biggest thing that I saw was that they want to eliminate interest on student loans, which I am all for it, because that's not going to cost money.
Exactly.
And it's not like they want to like forgive the debt either. It's just like the interest, and I think interest is stupid in the first place anyways.
Right. Because it's like they always tell us you're investing for your future. It's like that is true, but when you're taxing me more and more every year that hunk of money is sitting in my account, it's just like there's got to be something wrong with this system.
Yeah, it's like especially because like I said, things are getting more expensive, including tuition. So like people are gonna have to take out more loans, right? And if you graduate school with $100,000 in debt plus interest, you're just like
you're done.
You're screwed.
Yeah. I was gonna say that promise of removing debt, they estimate that'll remove $3,000 per person of loan money by the end of their term, which I think $3,000 might sound like a lot to some people and nothing to other people, but any amount taken off of that lump sum of student loan money is huge.
Yeah.
They did also say they want to increase the repayment threshold to $50,000 for student loan borrowers who are single. So if you have no dependents and you don't have a wife, that means for a new grad, you don't have to start paying your loan off till you're making $50,000 annually. And for someone who had been saving up while they were in school to start paying off immediately, that helps like a lot.
Yeah.
But even for the people who just completely ignored it, it's just like, oh wow, so now I get to make big boy money and then worry about the bills.
Yeah.
I think it's going to help more people than it would hurt, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was going to say the one other thing about the Liberal Party, they plan to hire 40,000 more early childhood educators. Big number. How they're going to pay those childhood educators, I don't know. But I think if they can implement it, probably good, because from the ed classes that I'm starting to take now that I'm at the U of A, class sizes in Alberta seem to be going up. I remember complaining about the 1 or 2 years that I had 30 kids in my classes when I was in elementary and junior high, and now that's commonplace, and they're nearing 35, 34, 35 kids in a class. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like, especially like here in Alberta, like we need more teachers, and like the teachers need to be paid better. Well, I don't know how much they get paid, but they obviously always can be paid better.
Right. I think if you look at it compared to America, obviously you can't say our teachers need more money, but it's relative. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, it's just kind of a tough situation in general, like with like the way this province has been going, like, economically, like there isn't the money to hire a lot of teachers or to hire a lot of nurses is another issue that a lot of people are focused on.
Yeah, and what really sucks is that it's a good place for teachers to work, man. The Alberta Teachers Association, I learned lots about that last year, and like teachers get treated well here. A lot gets covered here for the teachers, but I don't know. I think Alberta definitely needs to find a big main export outside of oil and gas that we need to start producing, so our economy can boom a little bit. But I agree with you. We need more teachers, and for us to get more teachers, school needs to be cheaper, or they need to pay people more, etc. There's got to be some give and take, because depending on where you come from, going and giving the government, owing them $65,000 might not be feasible. Right?
Yeah.
So the thing about the loans that I saw for the New Democrats, they want to introduce a targeted debt forgiveness program for graduates that'll forgive up to $20,000 in student debt. So, depending on who is losing that $20,000, I could get into this, because if the $20,000 is not money lost from the government of Canada and the taxes that we put in, it's lost from the universities, the money we've already paid to them. I don't have any problem with that, because they're sucking money out of our pockets every year. But like
it would come from the government.
That's what I figured. As soon as you start trying to forgive debt by, I don't know, I feel like you can't do that, because not everybody who pays taxes is a student, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, by forgiving debt, you're basically just printing money, right?
Right.
So like it's just gonna drive inflation up, and like obviously like that is lost revenue for the government. So like, again, who's gonna pay for it?
Exactly, man. Money doesn't grow on trees. Yes, it does, bro. Well, as soon as you print it off, has no value. Numbers are social constructs. None of this makes sense. Okay, and jobs, the big one. The big one.
So the Conservatives, they want to recover 1 million jobs that were lost during the pandemic within 1 year. They want to do this using the Canada Job Surge Plan, which would pay up to 50% of salary of new hires for 6 months following the current wage subsidy that's out.
Well, I can say this off the bat: everybody wants to recover 1 million jobs. That was the number that everybody chose, so I saw that. I thought that was awesome. But I like that the Conservatives gave us a time frame within a year. Neither of the other parties did that. Yeah. So I think it makes it evident that they're serious about doing that.
I think they did a really good job also of like explaining how they're gonna do it. Like like with the wage subsidy and with small business loans in tourism, hospitality, and retail, they're gonna loan people up to $200,000 and like forgive up to a quarter of it. Yeah. So like there were some really specific points in the plan that I think like people can look to of how they're actually gonna like create jobs for Canadians.
I was having an interesting conversation with somebody this week, and they were telling me that, I don't know if this is true, but 80 and up to 90% of the money that is in Canadian, just like in our market, is in small businesses. And I don't know if it's actually that high, but the person I was talking to was trying to get me to focus on the perspective that if that's where a majority of Canadians' money is, then putting money back to them would be putting more money in the pockets of most Canadians. And I really hadn't had that perspective before. I was like, I don't care about the small businesses, man. I'm trying to see money go into education so people can get learned and they can go into the workforce and make their own dollars. But that's because I want to be a teacher. I don't want to work for a small business or own a small business.
I think like you touched on a really like key difference between the conservatives and then the more left-leaning parties like the Liberals or the NDP. Like on the left they want to like kind of impose like a top-down kind of like spending on like government programs like education and healthcare, etc. But like the conservatives, they want to make stuff more affordable for Canadians. They want to put money in their pockets, give them jobs and all that stuff, and that way that it'll like boost the economy from the bottom up,
right?
And like people that make more money will pay more taxes.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing is that the way they're making the people who make more money pay more taxes is intelligent in the conservative sense. The Liberals literally wrote in their platform, we want the big giants to pay the most taxes. And it's like, obviously you want them to pay proportionally higher taxes if they're making proportionally higher money. You're alienating people by saying, we got to tax the crap out of the rich. We got to help the poor tax the crap out of the rich. I agree that everybody needs to help. That's why we're in a democracy. That's why we have taxes that pay for public services. But they created that money. They worked hard for that money. They worked every day for it. So there comes a point where I think you cannot just rely on the richest of the rich to get us, the rest of us, along. You know?
Yeah.
I think people have to get off their butts and do things every once in a while. So
Yeah, that's true.
So the New Democrats, they wanted to create over 1 million new good jobs in all communities and jobs building green infrastructure. But their job portion of their platform was really specific on EI and creating new domestic industries for Canada so we can actually make some money. So their EI stuff doesn't really make any sense to me, to be honest. The first point I agree with, a low income supplement so that people who are living on regular EI, like they need it to live, they would get no less than $2,000 a month. If you can find a way to do that without bankrupting us, then sure. Because I think, especially if you're living with a roommate, $2,000 can be a livable wage, depending on your situation, you know. But like when we were getting CERB, if you weren't living with your parents, that's not a livable wage. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't enough money, and I'm not saying it wasn't enough free money. Give me more free money, but you got to think about it realistically. Let's say your rent is $500. Let's say you spend $200 on groceries, then you have.
Bro, I don't know who's spending $200 on groceries
In a month?
Yeah.
Seriously? Yeah. Wow. Maybe I spend too much money
No,
on
I'm
groceries.
saying like
Oh.
more than that.
Oh, okay.
More than that.
Okay.
Groceries are fucking expensive.
Okay, so let's say that groceries take up half of the $2,000, groceries and rent, so you only have $1,000 left. Car breaks down in a week. Well, there's the rest of your money. What are you gonna do? You're gonna pay the gas. You're gonna pay the electric bill. Or you're gonna fix your car, right? So I think that's huge. They want to make EI available to people who quit their jobs to go back to school. I had a friend who was capable of working, fully capable, in the first pandemic, that sat there and collected EI for 6 months.
Yeah.
And those type of people piss me off, bro. Because it's like, dog, you're not hurt. Oh, but the government's offering it to me. It doesn't matter. Why are you taking free handouts? It just doesn't make sense to me like that. So that, I think, is very problematic because there's going to be so many students who are going to jump onto that bandwagon. It's like, oh, now I don't have to work. The government's just giving me $2,000 every month.
Yeah.
I think that's tough.
Yeah, it's crazy. One thing that I noticed from all three parties is like the focus on the green economy.
Yes.
Investment in green infrastructure, especially, and the retrofit economy. So like retrofitting houses and buildings with more like green technology.
Yeah, new green tech to replace the oil and gas and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like as I said, all three parties want to do that, and I think that that'll be a great way to create jobs and tackle climate change at the same time.
Yes, and I think it'll create jobs on all three levels of fiscal earnings. You know what I'm saying? It'll create the upper class jobs for the people who are chemical engineers and environmentalists who are at the top, and then it'll create the middle wage jobs for the people who are working, actually retrofitting the buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll create a whole like new industry almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the fact I'm looping back around to the Conservatives, all three of the main players are now like, climate change is happening and we need to do something about it. If we hop on that bandwagon, bro, we might end up being the leading force in that. And I think that would be a huge, like, it would be huge to put Canada at the front of the stage as a green country who is producing a lot into the field of protecting the environment, because we have 35 million people, but we're the second biggest country in the world, I think, behind Russia. So, like, land-wise, and like, people want to live here, and to keep it beautiful, we gotta put money into the environment. But not only that, if we can make money off of the fact that people want to come to Canada, they want to see Canada, Canada is at the top of the green sector, I think that would be a huge export for us, because it's basically our whole country already.
Yeah.
One question that I wanted to ask you about the jobs is that, have you found personally that finding a job as a student in the last 2 summers was particularly difficult? Because I ran into some issues getting jobs, but I didn't have issues getting interviews, and it wasn't like there was ever any time where I wasn't working because I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was that hard to find a job these last 2 summers if you were actually looking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would have been easy to apply for a couple jobs and just say fuck it, and
Exactly.
There's no work, but there's work, man. There's always work.
Facts. And you need to be willing to sacrifice, right? Like, my first year, I did lawn care that whole summer.
Yeah.
And it broke my body, but I made bank, you know?
I mean, like, obviously, like, the job might not be the one that you want, but you can't tell me that there's no work.
Facts.
Yeah.
There's bills that you have to pay, and there's work that people need done, so sometimes your ego's gonna have to take a hit.
Yeah, I don't understand, like you were saying, like, how people can just sit there and just collect a check when there's, like, you're able-bodied and there is jobs to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That might just be acting out of service coming out of us, man. Just, like, liking to help other people, but I don't know. I think, especially in Canada, I would like to see more of us acting with other people in mind first, as opposed to the Western philosophy, self-centered lifestyle, you know? Me and mine first and forget everybody else, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think the Conservatives are making that change, you know, and it really, really makes me happy.
Actually, I wanted to ask you about that. Like, one thing I've been thinking about is kind of the ideological separation between the parties.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think that it's important? Like, obviously the NDP is more like collective, like, minded, and then like a party like the People's Party is more towards individual rights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do you stand on that?
Well, I would say I think the way our country does it is great, because we have the opportunity to focus on the big three, but there's multiple, right? And there's so many parties along the spectrums that wherever you align ideologically, there will be somebody for you. So in that aspect, I think it's good. But the problem is that, like, in an election like this, where I really think this could be a swing year, like, a lot of middle ground voters that usually vote either left or right might take the opportunity to swing the next way or the other way this year. You need to be clear on who you are as a party. And I think as the parties see that and they adopt a more open-minded growth mindsets in their ideological standpoints, it helps everybody else out. But personally, myself, I'm in education. You know, I grew up in a single parent household. I'm really centered on helping me by helping other people. So, like, as opposed to where I fall, I would be much more community centered than individual rights centered. But that's because my individual rights as a human being haven't been under attack recently. It just doesn't seem like it needs to be a priority for me. If I was an indigenous people, it'd be a lot different story, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm planning on voting conservative, and I'll tell you why. I kind of touched on it already. I mean, like, I think that they're the party that's going to make things affordable for us. And like I said, I think that's probably the biggest issue. I think that they're going to balance the budget.
Yep.
And I don't think they're going to spend recklessly like the Liberals have. Also, like, kind of touching on that last point, I think that ideologically they stand, like, for individual rights, which I appreciate, and, like, for individualism and, like, true, like, Western values, like, more so than, especially the NDP. Like, the NDP is, like, super anti, like, Western values, I think.
And I agree with that being a problem, because it's like we're in a Western society. There's a difference between inclusion and saying, okay, we're going to go there, get included, and then say, but our way is still better, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think you can just drop all the ideologies of Western culture when you live in a Western society. So, I'm honestly still on the fence. But if I were to tell you that I had to go sign my ballot in a couple hours from now, I would be voting Liberal. And that is just because I'm in education. I really care about the student loan debt that I have accumulating. I really care about having an opportunity to work in Alberta and help prosper the province that gave 18 years to me, you know. And teachers get treated really well here. I also really like the focuses that they're planning on taking for the climate. But my problem is that I was really on the fence because I love this new wave of conservatives. And I genuinely think that the conservative platform might have been my favorite had I known more about the budget. So in my mind, right now, I would love to see on a federal level a Canadian conservative government, but I want to see a Liberal Alberta. Because I don't think that we could have two levels of conservative government and not live. I couldn't live here anymore. You know, I genuinely don't think I could. But I think with the new wave of conservatives, I would love to see them in control on the national level. So if they win, I'm going to be happy for them. But this is my plea for you not to vote for Jason Kenney if he runs again. Whoever's listening in our next Alberta election, please.
Yeah, you might be in luck.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So, like, if you had to vote now, you would vote Liberal.
Yes.
Does it bother you? Does, like, the ethics record that Justin Trudeau has, does that bother you?
Obviously, yes. And especially you brought most of it to light to me over the last year when we lived together and we were talking. Like, he's getting money from suspicious places. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that any of this stuff isn't happening. Yeah. But in my mind, because I don't know enough about the numbers, I don't think that what he's doing is bad enough to keep me from voting towards my morals and my stance. You know? Yeah. And I know we're not going to agree here, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, my bro got convicted 3 times. The first prime minister in history to break federal ethics laws. 3 times, bro.
I'm dying. Honestly, I get why everybody hates him, and I honestly wish somebody else was heading the party. Because it wouldn't, in my opinion, then it wouldn't have been such a toss-up for me, because I agree with the Liberal politics at this current intersection, what am I trying to say, juncture, but I don't agree with the Liberal Party's head. So it's like, why didn't they put somebody else up there? I genuinely don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, Bro, let me just say that man is corrupt. Unequivocally, I'm gonna put it on the record right now. I think that Justin Trudeau is the most corrupt politician I've ever seen.
And I think you're entitled to that. And I genuinely, if I knew more about it, I probably would be inclined to agree with you. But unfortunately, I cannot. The Conservatives just did not do enough for me. Because, like I said, if I have to search Command F on your document to find what you're going to do about education, and that's where I'm going in to the rest of my life, it's just a tough sell.
Yeah, but don't you think that the other things, like living in Alberta, like, don't you think that they're the party that, don't you think that they're the party that's going to stand up for Alberta?
Yes, I do think they're the party that is going to stand up for Alberta, but the problem is I would rather the party stand up for all of Canada. I don't circumscribe to this idea. You're obviously not saying this, and I'm not trying to put these words into your mouth, but make Alberta great again. I think that's really wild. I think we need to make Canada the best place that we possibly can, and who's going to help us the most there? I don't feel like it's Mr. Trudeau, but I do feel like it's the Liberals at this juncture. But like I said, if the Conservatives win, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it'll be an interesting 4 years. A quick question I wanted to ask you, because we're running out of time on the video. I saw this thing that people said he called this swing election just to cement that he's still that guy, Do you think that this was rushed just because he knows this is going to be the last opportunity or one of the last opportunities for him to win, because he can still adhere to all of the students who are in our age groups that are just hardcore lefties to keep him up there? Because I really think Aaron O'Toole, if this election had happened a year, maybe 2 years from now, he'd win without even a discussion.
I don't know. It's hard to say because, like, first of all, I think that the election call is a power grab.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, like, everybody's saying anyways. Is he just wants a majority just, like, to push stuff through Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just, like, he called Parliament toxic just because they won't pass what he wants them to pass.
Right.
But, like, that's whatever. But I hard pressed to say that Aaron O'Toole would win if it was a couple years later.
Okay.
Because, like, it seems that things are trending left.
Yeah.
Especially from what we saw in the States over the past year, and the attempt of, like, Canadian leftists to, like, associate conservatism with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that trend will probably continue.
I hope it doesn't, man. I'm going to try and advocate as much as I can for these new wave of conservatives, because like I said, I think it's very important to be able to switch. You need to be able to see both sides,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we can call it there.
No, just I'm excited to see what happens over this election.
Yeah. Well, there doesn't need to be video for this part. I'm also excited to see what happens over the course of this election. And this is my plea for all of you to go exercise your civic duty and vote, man.
Yes, please vote.
If we want to see change, we got to do something about it. So hopefully you enjoyed us blabbering on about the parties for however long, and go vote, man.
Yeah, hope we could help. Appreciate all you guys listening, as always.
Take it easy, and we'll see you next time.